Hey everybody, on this episode of Chords and Coffee, we're going to do something a little bit different. I read a comment the other day, it broke my heart. The comment was, I don't like going to guitar shops because I feel anxiety because I never know what to play and I don't know what to do when someone else is playing loud around me. And look, we're going to fix that right here and right now. In this episode, I'm going to prepare you to have the best guitar store experience possible by giving you some things to play that are super easy. They're the kind of things that can also incite a jam with a total stranger, and this will make your guitar shop experience way better than you've ever had. So here we go. So when you're trying out an electric guitar, or an acoustic guitar for that matter, but even on an electric guitar, you want to hear the acoustic resonance without even being plugged in, okay? And one of the very first things you should do before you pick up a guitar and start strumming it is you ought to walk up to your favorite music store person working at your favorite music store and say these words or something real close to it. Hello, may I borrow a tuner? I would like to tune before and after I play. Watch the gleam in their eyes as they're filled with just unending gratification and appreciation for the profound statement that you just whispered to them in soft velvet tones. That will change the whole deal for you. You know why? Because it's really hard to keep all these guitars in tune in any shop. Because folks come in, some folks play, different tunings. Other folks, maybe they try to tune by ear and they get close enough but no cigar. Tune the darn thing. You'll change the world. So when I pick up an electric guitar, one of the first things I do is just play a good old-fashioned G chord to a G sus. And I'm listening for the acoustic resonance. And I'm going to do this before I plug it in for two reasons. Number one, I just want to hear how it's resonating. And then number two, if there's any kind of weird vibration, could be a loose nut on one of the string posts, could be something, it could be a strap lock for all you know, right? If there's any kind of weird vibration, I want to pay attention to that and see if that translates to the guitar. But listen. Now here's a completely different one. We're talking about different flavors of ice cream here. One's not necessarily better than the other, but as you're listening to the resonance, that's the inherent sonic DNA of that guitar. That's ultimately what the pickups are picking up before it plugs into the amp. That G sharp right there on the 9th fret of the B string. So I'm playing the B string here on the 9th fret using my ring finger, and I kind of slide into it. For whatever reason, maybe it's because of where it's located on the guitar, but that's a really sustaining note. And that's a great, just one thing that you can do when you pick up a guitar just to kind of test its sustain. Obviously, when you're playing a PRS, these things are built for that kind of experience, lots of sustain. But I think it's true of all guitars, especially electric. That's a great thing to test. There was a book I read many years ago called Zen Guitar, and there was a moment in that book, a little chapter. It was divided into all these little thoughts, so each chapter could be a page, right? And it said, know one thing. And it specifically said, when you're playing, you ought to be able to really just experiment with the sound of one note and really know that well. In fact, even years before I read that, there was Eric Johnson instructional VHS that I watched where he talked about practicing the sound of playing one note and all the different ways that you could articulate that to really get the most juice for your squeeze. And a lot of times when I sit down to play, I want to play an amp that I'm familiar with, right? When you're trying out a guitar, one of the biggest mistakes that folks will make is they'll plug into an amp they've never played before and hear a sound that they're not familiar with, and now they're trying to try out a guitar. And man, it's like you're trying to cook in somebody else's kitchen. You'd be doing good to get something that tastes good, right? So find an amp you're familiar with. Well, Nate, I'm not familiar with any amps. Well, you need to be hanging out at a guitar store more often, trying some amps, right? Find an amp you're familiar with. Start plugging guitars into it. And I usually set everything at like noon, and then start making little micro adjustments, usually taking away before I start turning things up, like bass, mid-range, and treble, and trying to find a nice sustaining tone. And one of the things I like to play too is I want to hear what an electric guitar does with some gain and a lot of verb. Right now I'm on this Sanzera and I have the verb all the way off. I'm going to turn it up pretty hot. I mean, that's pretty echoey, right? And I might play something where I just roll the volume down just a little bit. Why am I doing this? Because it's the kind of thing I would do live, but also the kind of thing I would do just at home, playing for just the sheer enjoyment of it. Right, and playing these little octaves. And here, I'll put the chord charts on the screen for what I'm playing here. I just turned up my volume a little bit. I'm going to go to the bridge pickup, just straight on the humbucker, no coil tap. Started to kind of get away from me there. What was I doing? Well, I was testing the sensitivity of the pickups for how I play. And what I liked about that is that I can turn the volume down on this and I can get a kind of clean tone on a sound that's pretty dirty. Speaking of which, I'm going to give you this. I hesitated even showing you this because this is like my sound check lick. When I'm playing at church or playing a show and they're doing a line check and they're going through and checking everybody, I like to have the same lick that I play every single time because I want to be able to focus on the way my guitar sounds in the house, but also I just want to hear the tone and not be thinking about what I'm playing. So I do this. I do that lick every time I play. And see, right then and there, as I'm hearing that, I'm like, that's a little muddy. I might add a little treble, maybe a little presence here. See if I can brighten that up. And also, there's a lot of gain. I might back my drive off a little bit. What am I doing? I'm starting on the 3rd fret of the A string, and then going to the 4th fret of the A, and then playing that open D string, and then slightly bending the 3rd fret of the A, and then pulling off right to that A, and playing it again. So the open A right there. And then slightly bending on the 3rd fret of the low E, and then to the A chord, 2nd fret straight across with the index finger on from the D string all the way over to the B, and then hitting that D over A right there, which is just going to be ring finger on the 4th fret of the D, index finger on the 2nd fret of the G, and then middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B. It would bless me to no end to be somewhere in this wide world one day and to hear from across the way, and be like, that's one of my Chords and Coffee friends. Okay, so you're at your favorite guitar shop. Maybe you want to try some guitar brands, makes, models, or something that you don't normally play. You know, you're trying to find something that's inspiring and there's somebody playing really loud right next to you. What do? I'm going to give you 2 things. Number 1, if they're playing great, encourage them. Man, that sounds great. Strike up a conversation. And then you might lead into, well, hey, let's jam something together. I'm here checking out this guitar. The truth is always the truth. Just tell them the truth. Man, I'm here checking out this guitar. I'd like to play a little bit. I need to hear this thing. Let's play something together. Well, Nate, I wouldn't know what to play. Well, I'm going to show you something. And by the way, this works also for somebody that might be a newer player. Most players, somewhere in their first year, have walked up to the A minor pentatonic scale and shaken hands. And if they haven't, maybe you can show them a real easy lick. Or maybe you can show them this real easy chord progression. It goes just a little something like this. We're going to play A sus2. I'm going to use my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D. I'm going to use my ring finger on the 2nd fret of the G. I've got an open A string. Everything else is open. I'm not playing the low E. And then I'm going to play a C major 7. Ring finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the A. Middle finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of the D. I'm going to play the open G and the B. I might not play the high E. I might just kind of keep it down to the A, D, and G strings. But as this thing kind of opens up and this jam sort of evolves, I might get all of them involved, right? Then the 3rd chord and the last chord of this little progression, we're just going to slide up to this, think of it as like a D sus4. If you add the high E, it becomes like a D sus4, sus2, or add 9, however you want to think about it. But it's basically just a D sus4 chord. You're going to have your ring finger on the 5th fret of the A, boom, middle finger, 4th fret of the D, open G, and then index finger on the 3rd fret of the B. This is, it could be like Liza Jane, Vince Gill. It could be After Midnight, Eric Clapton, J.J. Cale. It's a cool progression where A minor pentatonic sounds really cool. And as far as timing, I might go. See, I just made a mistake, but I'm still playing. And also, I just noticed I'm kind of hitting that open G right there, using that D and the G string open, and then hammering on with that A sus2. That's an easy little thing that you could, on accident, end up finding you a guitar buddy in your favorite guitar shop. Something else that plays a huge factor in how a guitar resonates, how it sounds, is its ability to project harmonics. And that's something that I always like to sit down and do, just listen to the harmonics coming off that 12th fret. And when I say 12th fret, if you're looking at the double dots on a guitar, it's not the fret behind the double dots, it's the fret closest to the sound hole, okay? So it's the one in front of it. And just the same way on the 7th fret, you got that, this is gonna be, if a guitar has dots, and most of them do, it's gonna be the 3rd dot up. So the 7th fret, I'm on the fret that is closest to the sound hole, right? Same thing on the 5th. And as you play those different harmonics up and down each string, it's one of those things where it doesn't mean it's not a good guitar if it doesn't have great harmonics, but it is something you ought to take note of, right? And while we're talking about acoustic guitars, as soon as we walked in this room, I just have this memory of being a kid, and I told my folks I really want to play guitar, and I talked about it for a long time before I was able to get one. And my dad would take me to different guitar shops, and I had my mom's. She had a couple. I don't even remember what they were. There were a couple of acoustics, and they weren't that great, but I had those, and I was just kind of, dinking around on them. And I remember going into this little pawn shop in the middle of the Boot Heel in Missouri. I wished I remembered the man's name. I wished I remembered the name of the place. I was a kid. I'm a 16-year-old kid, and the whole thing was a blur. But you know what's funny? Is I remember this little tune I'm about to show you. And I just think that is so, poetic. I don't remember the guy. I don't even know what kind of man he was as far as his character. But you know what? I remember this song, and now I'm going to show it to you. And the reason I remembered it was the first time, just a second ago, we were talking about, inciting a jam in a music store. Well, this is the first time that happened to me. And I remember him saying, well, hey, you know the A minor pentatonic scale? And I said, yeah, kind of. And he said, well, here, just play around on that for a little bit. I'm going to play with you. And this is what he played. I'm not going to win a Grammy for that, right? But it's a neat, cute little thing that you can play, and it's also, as you get it in your hands, you can kind of mess with it, make it sound even better. So what am I doing? I got my index finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, the G, and the B, playing a 1-finger A, and then I'm hitting that D over A thing that we like to do so much, that Keith Richards kind of Stonesy things. That's going to be ring finger on the 4th fret of the D, index finger on the 2nd fret of the G, middle finger on the 3rd fret of the B. And I'm going back and forth on that. And kind of push the last one and resolve it. And then D over F sharp, index finger on the 2nd fret of the low E. I'm not playing the A string this time, but I am playing an open D. I've got my middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G, and then I like to do pinky on the 3rd fret of the B. And then take that index finger and lower it to that F natural, making it kind of a D minor chord. So you went from D over F sharp to D minor over F. And you can hit your open E on both of those because it sounds nice. But you can do a lot with that. And if somebody else is playing a pentatonic, they're going to sound awesome. And I remember that as a kid. That was the first time I think I ever played music with a total stranger and ended up making something that sounded pretty cool. You know, sometimes folks forget that if you play with a capo a lot, whether that's at home, whether that's at church, whether that is in front of a band, you ought to try the guitar that you're looking at with a capo. It's not crazy to go to the salesperson and say, hey, can I borrow a capo? The reason for that is that not all acoustic guitar necks, or just guitar necks in general, are created equal. Sometimes they can be kind of big as you approach the body of the guitar, right? And maybe the traditional Kaiser capo doesn't wrap around that good. In fact, we did a whole episode on capos, and the thumbnail looks like this if you're curious what sort of capo options are out there. But you ought to try it, because it'd be good to know. I'd hate for you to fall in love with the guitar, plays great in an open position. You go to capo it up for Here Comes the Sun, and no dice, right? So go ahead and ask for that capo. That's not crazy. You never know what you're going to find in your favorite guitar shop. I can speak for us. We're getting shipments in all the time. Sometimes there's something cool that comes in on trade. All the more reason to come on into your favorite guitar store. But even more important than that, you're probably going to meet a guitar buddy. You're probably going to meet a new lifelong friend. Part of music is building community. And that's what we're doing. Every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central Time, Chords and Coffee is brewing up a fresh brew of guitar-related content that's just for you. Your thoughts, your ideas that are in the comments contribute to what we're doing. And this episode was built off of somebody's apprehension about walking into a guitar shop, and I hope we've addressed it, and I hope we've encouraged you. We're living life the best we can with a guitar in our hand. Thank you for the privilege of your time. We'll see you next week for another Chords and Coffee.